Perfect. We begin the recording for today. Um, my name is Justin Zombik. I'm going to be moderating our panel today. We have three wonderful students that are going to be um, having a fellowship for the next year, and maybe even beyond as they continue with the work that they're going to be doing. So at this time, I'm going to just quickly lay the ground rules for the discussion today. The purpose of this is to kind of provide exposure, insight, and preparation on the fellowship acquisition process and what that looked like for this class of 2026 graduating cohort. Um, and for the students that are in attendance today, please jot down any questions that you might have, something that we might not cover. It'd be, great for you to hear what questions that you might have. And then mention any specific thing. We'll have some Q&A at the end of it, or if we need to do any sort of cleanup, we absolutely can as well. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our panel of P4s here to introduce themselves and let us know where they're going to be going for next year.
I can start. Hi everyone, I'm Marissa. I'm a fourth year pharmacy student, and I obtained my fellowship at Novartis in East Hanover through the Rutgers Pharmaceutical Fellowship Program. So very excited to be here tonight and talk with you all.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Gianna Besser. I got my fellowship also at Novartis, but through the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy instead of Rutgers. So I will be based in Massachusetts. My specific job title is a biomedical research fellow in preclinical trials. So, and I'm going to be doing quality assurance throughout of that. But yeah. That's me. Pass it off to Nahala.
Hi everyone, my name is Nihala. I'm a fourth year student. I accepted an offer in a postdoctoral fellowship in medical affairs and medical communications in a company called Symbiotics, which is a health communications agency. But yeah, I'm just more excited to speak more about the process and give you guys a rundown.
And Marissa, did you mention what you're going to be doing specifically with Novartis?
No, I forgot. So I will be doing regulatory strategy, specifically in like cardiovascular and renal department. So very excited about that.
That's very awesome. It's great to hear that all three of you are going to be in different locations too, which is wonderful, even out of the state. So, for the panel, again, at your leisure, however you want to answer this, what initially drew you to pursue a postdoctoral training instead of going directly into the workforce?
I can start. I would say for fellowship, that's something that I heard early on before going into pharmacy school. And I knew that I always wanted to eventually work in the pharmaceutical industry. So after hearing that fellowship was an opportunity after graduation and something that you can like really work on training yourself in that 2 year time period, I felt like that would be a good transition for me coming from being a student to transitioning full time into a full time role. And so I really was appealed to that idea and being around mentors and people that can really help grow your skills. And so that's really what gravitated me towards that aspect.
To like bounce off of that, I also want to have like the same opinion. I was, I'm like scared low key to graduate. I've been going to school, like I haven't had a break in between any of my graduations. So I have my undergraduate as well, and I went straight into graduate school. So thinking about moving on into the work fields scared me, but knowing that I had this opportunity, it kind of like relieved that tension a little bit. Additionally, I also worked in the retail setting. And it's not something that I generally preferred. So when I found out that there were other opportunities, especially in the industry, I was really interested in that.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really excited about the mentorship aspect of it. And being able to have so many people to look up to and ask for help, it's especially like helpful before starting out like a real world job. Like I feel like people in a fellowship, those around you want to help you and want to see you succeed. So that's what drew me in.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that experience. So, what factors influenced you most? You had mentioned mentorship being, one of them, kind of aligning with career goals, or even providing to you all kind of like that gap experience to kind of fill in the professional role that you might have. So talk about what other influences that you might have had in your decision making.
So
I
I uh,
oh no, continue.
Uh, I was just going to talk about how I prefer research over retail or clinical. That is everybody's personal opinion. And I give props to the people who can do retail or clinical. I've had a internship at an Acme pharmacy, so it's more of a supermarket than a pharmacy. It's not like a CVS or Walgreens. So I don't even get that much experience with patients as they do. I could only imagine what they go through. But yeah, knowing what it's like in those settings already, that's what really influenced me and my decision the most.
I think what really influenced me was also I was able to do an internship at Novo Nordisk and in medical affairs. So that made me, after I did that internship, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do. Like I really enjoyed it and getting to know people there and the work I was doing. So that's how I kind of like entered like applying to fellowships knowing exactly what I wanted. But it's like something you could like figure out by, applying to internships, trying to do appy rotations in industry and getting that experience before you go in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think knowing what you don't like was also like a huge thing for me as well. Like retail, like how Gianna said as well. I knew like I was a pharmacy tech for a while before even going into pharmacy school. So like I knew that wasn't really where I saw myself long term. So that was a big factor. And then I was always interested in helping as many people as possible. So my head was always geared towards research and like pharmaceutical industry and that route. So that was probably my major like motivator to get hopefully a fellowship. That was like my thoughts through pharmacy school. And I also think what helped solidify like the functional area that I wanted in that regard was mostly my appies. I definitely recommend applying to industry appies that the school offers, doing the ones that you can also have through the lottery system, any way that you can get that exposure, I think really helps you see firsthand what they do on a daily basis. And I knew that like through my one of my appy rotations that I didn't want to do clinical development, which was what I originally thought I wanted to do. And it really helped me just assess that like that path better for me. So I definitely would say take the opportunities from the school and use it to the best of your ability.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I want to get into a little bit more about the application process, the the experience for one, exploration, and then two, like the actual gathering of your materials. So to start, can you let me know like what were you looking for in each program that you were applying to? Was there anything specifically that were kind of like something you were trying to get toward, or were you kind of just like open to all options as you began applying?
I feel like I was seeking ones with a lot of rotational experiences. When you look through brochures, you'll see a lot of different kind of like fellowship layouts, but there's some that have like rotations in different functional areas, which I think is pretty valuable, especially when you're starting out and trying to figure out what you want to do in the future. So that was something like I really wanted was to have multiple like different experiences to add onto my CV. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree by that. And I think also when you're in interviews, you can ask them like firsthand, you can ask them what kind of experiences will you offer? What projects will it be involved in? Is there opportunity to go maybe outside of your functional area if you're interested in that? And people are like very open to like hearing your questions and they'll tell you exactly like how the fellowship curriculum is planned out. So you'll know like pretty early on, even before you go to the interview, you can meet with fellows during the summertime before you even put your application in, and you'll hear firsthand from them like what their experience was like. So it kind of gives you a good litmus of what you'll expect of the company before you even apply.
To be completely honest, I really didn't care about where I ended up. I just wanted a fellowship. So, Rutgers only offered you 10 spots to apply to, and there was maybe 50 plus spots that were available. What I did is I applied for the positions that offered more than just one applicant. It felt like it gave me like a better opportunity, because now you're competing for two spots instead of just one. And it was the same for Massachusetts. Massachusetts just didn't stop me at any number of applications. So I really just applied wherever I could, and I think that's honestly why I got so many interview offers. But yeah, that's my honest opinion.
Yeah, I actually agree with that too because you can see where certain positions, it'll tell you how many positions they have available. So I remember going through the interview process being like, oh, I remember this one had like three openings. And I was like, okay, I'm like really excited about this one. And you'll see for those, like you'll probably get more interviews for that one because the chances are just higher. So yeah, I agree with that.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that was very interesting. You each kind of like had a little bit of different dynamic with kind of what you were looking for. And then in determining, right, you mentioned the brochures, which can be overwhelming, right? When you get the materials essentially that kind of highlight and outline all the things that are available to you, it does look daunting at first, right? So,
Definitely.
again, as you were going through it, and as you began kind of like deciding where to apply and like having interviews, whether first touch points, second touch points, communications, how did you determine fit? So, like during your interview process, how did you decide on like what was going to be a good fit and align with you?
Mm, I can start. I guess I would say I think it's all about just like how you conversate also with the people on the team. It's also how you feel like I also tried to imagine myself like could I see this person like really like mentoring me throughout the process like do I feel that like I'm going to learn something from them like I really tried to like imagine that through the process or some interviews you'll see like it's just like quick like they just answer the questions you go through it and it's not like as personable but then the ones where I felt like it was more conversational, that's the ones that I gravitated towards more and was more, I felt like I would be a better fit in because you can really see yourself in like that future situation with them. Like you really envision it. So that's kind of how I went about it. Yeah.
I completely agree because there's definitely interviews where first rounds where it's like question after question and like no small talk, but there's also ones that you have like great conversations with people and you actually like see shared interests with fellows and you're like, hey, I could actually like see myself working with them. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of like you have to vibes, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I have the same opinion. Definitely off the vibes.
It's funny you say that because again, during our residency panel, we asked a question about kind of like how did they know when they were making a selection, and they said vibes was the number one answer that they also kind of had. So no, it's very interesting to hear that dynamic. And did anybody have any of your own like goals and aspirations change during the application process itself? Like, thinking like, oh, I really want to do this. And as you kind of find out more about it or knew what was available to you, kind of like shifted and changed to say, maybe I should go more into this specific area. Was there any experience that you all had about that, like the process of it changing as you were getting your materials together?
I really, really wanted to do regulatory affairs, and that was just because of my experience at FDU. I took a lot of elective courses regarding like the FDA and things like that. So I was really interested on in that side of pharmacy. And then once everything happened with the government and the FDA like shut down, I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So I realized that industry did have that option. So when I was applying, I was looking for regulatory affairs over everything else. Um, but a lot of those positions do require you to do a lot more. And when I was going through the application process and I was also getting information about the other positions I applied to, I was actually grateful that the regulatory affairs kind of just like flew out the window. I and I also, like I said, I really enjoy research and the side of even clinical trials, but specifically preclinical trials is what I'm doing. So I also kind of made sure that it did connect with my interests a little bit.
Anybody else have any interest change throughout the process? Gianni, I like how you had an open mind, right? You thought you knew something or wanted something, and then kind of was like a, almost like a blessing, right, in disguise that worked out that way for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would say like something similar just in the sense of like the functional area, because I know I mentioned before I was originally leaning towards clinical development, but that was like in my appy year before I applied. Well, when did we apply? Oh, we applied in like September, I think. Yeah, so it was during like the summer of my appies. I thought I wanted to do clinical development, and so I was set on that. But then appies changed my mind and my interest, and then I went like regulatory strategy, also in combination of like the FTU classes that I took as well, like with Gianna and Nahala in my classes. So like that also like really influenced my mindset. But then during fellowship, what I guess changed my mind a bit, I would say like how I answered questions. You'll notice through interviews like what questions they ask and the way you answer with certain stories, they'll really like that answer. And so then you'll be like, okay, I'm going to keep using that example from my resume because it seems like I get really good feedback from the answer. So there were certain things where I was like, oh, okay, I'm not going to say that example anymore because I don't know if that's really like displaying all of my skills in the way that I want it to. I'm going to bring up this other thing on my resume. So I think you'll notice that a lot as you go through the interviews. So that's my answer for that question.
Sure, absolutely. And that's a perfect segue because I want to talk about application and interviews now. You mentioned September, right?
Yeah.
As like when it all started. So let's talk about your timeline. So timeline for preparation of materials and timeline for applying. Can you talk about where it started for you, and kind of where maybe it picked up or you kind of maybe felt there was pressures of deadlines? If you just kind of want to talk about what that looked like for you, that'd be appreciated.
I feel like I started thinking about making sure I had like materials, some practice, like by the end of the summer. That might be a little like too early, but I feel like it does pick up. Like once you get into the process of getting interviews, you're not gonna have as much time to prepare. So I would say at the end of the summer, definitely schedule mock interviews, not just like one, like multiple mock interviews, like even record yourself like during your mock interviews and see where you could improve upon. You could literally use AI to help you, like because it does you'll get to a point where first round interviews for at least for Rutgers were like one whole week. And it's like interview after interview, and then you might not have time to prepare yourself. So I would definitely say start early. Ask your professors for recs for sure. Start that early too. But yeah.
So late summer was mentioned, right? That's when you started specifically, Marissa or Gianna. Did you guys have different experiences with that?
It was the same for us as well. We applied around the same time. But the interview process was very demanding. And it also doesn't help that it's during your rotations, unless you have that block off. But yeah, so your rotation's supposed to be 9 to 5. And let's say you get it at 5 o'clock. That's usually when the first rounds of interviews are for that night. And you have to be there the time that you said you would because you're scheduling this in advance too. So yeah, everything does come really fast. I definitely had burnout I maybe had like minimum 3 interviews a day for 3 weeks straight, maybe. But the questions, honestly, they're a lot easier than I thought they were gonna be. I think maybe I tried to make them more conversational, just because that's the personality I have. But yeah, they were a lot different than what I've heard from other students.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Marissa, anything different for you?
No, same timeline. Pretty much,
Perfect.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So, so the application process, I guess, really like they became online and active in September, if I'm not mistaken, correct? That's just about
Yes, I
right?
believe
Okay.
so, yes.
And then your actual interviews began, like the application window was open, I think like, mid-September through the end of September, and then the interviews themselves began in October. Is that
Yeah, I think it was like end of October
Mhm.
or no, it was definitely like mid-October, like November, right?
Mine went through all of October, November, but I also
Yeah.
applied to multiple different programs.
Sure.
That's the other thing. Like Rutgers is its own program.
Right.
Massachusetts College of Pharmacy is its own program. There's California that has their own program. And that's something that I didn't know beforehand until I actually Googled it during the application process. So just so you all know, there's multiple schools that have these fellowships. And you're not just secluded to Rutgers. There's New York, there's so many places. And even if you do it through another school, they have options for it to be in other states. So for example, there was the California College of Pharmacy. They had a fellowship in Florham at Santa Fe. So I would be applying to the California College of Pharmacy, but working with Santa Fe in Florham Park in Jersey. So yeah, that's something that I didn't know beforehand, and I feel like that would help a lot of you.
No, yeah, that's a great piece of advice. To follow up kind of off that as well, regarding different colleges, IPHO, their actual website, right? Did you look to any sort of resources? You said Google was a great help, but were there any other like, I guess, structured resources that were available to you or you frequented and checking what might have been available, throughout this process, or did you kind of do self-independent research?
I feel like I did both. The IPHO fellowship tracker, it was also very helpful, especially if you're applying to a bunch of fellowships and you also want to find non-affiliated ones. And I think it's a great way to find different fellowships and really like cast your net.
Yeah, I agree. I use that as well. And then I also did like my own research, looking up the individual like colleges of pharmacy and seeing like what they offer on their website. But IPHO is great. You have like definitely use that. I agree. Because they give you notifications too. If you sign up, they'll like email you and say like, oh, like a new one just got posted. So like it's good.
Definitely make an account too, because you would have to, I think, log into your account to see the full list of fellowships for that year. I used IPHO as well. And also, I used LinkedIn, honestly. I would look up. I mean, it's not the greatest because they usually use like these online resources that IPHO, Rutgers, blah, 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 they post. But I did find a couple through LinkedIn, and yeah, I mean, they didn't really matter, but I used
It
them.
was still a great resource nonetheless, right? Like it was there for you.
Yeah.
As good or inefficient it may have been, it was still another way. For the IPHO profile creation, because there is a paid tier for it. Did you pay into the actual national body membership in IPHO for any sort of resource development?
I don't think I
I don't
did.
think you have to
Okay.
for the tracker, no. I
Oh,
Yeah.
think
okay.
that's
That's good.
just
That's
a
good to
guest
know.
account.
For other
Yeah.
sources, yeah. But like I think, but not the tracker.
Sure. So there's kind of the hidden costs, if you will, of like the potential that you could be paying into for getting into specific access to different areas. Okay, it's good to know. We'll talk more about costs here in a little bit too, as we get into kind of like the interview progression. So, speaking more about your application materials, at this point, having now acquired fellowships, in your opinion, what does a strong application look like? Like, what would you say? Was something that like helped you stand out compared to maybe your competitors, or what you maybe would do differently if you were applying like again from start, kind of like what comes to mind regarding your materials?
I would say a good application. I don't really think there's a right answer, but because I think everyone is different in their own journey and path. But I think like for me, I just try to do as much as I can to build my resume. I knew when I started pharmacy school, my resume was very short. I had nothing on it. And I was like, I need to build this up and grow my skills if I want to pursue like a fellowship post graduation. And so what started for me was doing the master's in regulatory sciences at FDU. That was like, okay, my first thing on the resume that I can add. And then I was grateful to get into research with Dr. Patel when in our first year of pharmacy school. So that was also another way for me to like grow my skills and talk about that during interviews. So I know that they do like when you talk about stories that that help showcase the skills that you learned because they like to see that, you applied yourself through pharmacy school, you were committed to goals and things of that nature. So I would say just getting involved as much as possible. You don't need to have like a billion things on your resume, but if you have strong things that you can talk about that you're really proud of, I think that's what would really help you in your fellowship journey.
To go off of the resume, I also think it's really important to have a resume that's really well formatted for these because you have fellows that are really looking through your resumes and making sure that everything's like organized well. So my advice would definitely be to show your resume to a bunch of people, your professors, and like get their input.
Besides for the resume, because that's important. Um, a lot of my questions were based off of my experiences outside of FDU. They really liked the idea that I was an intern at a retail pharmacy to have that background. They liked the idea of the appies that I chose because I knew about wanting a fellowship. I chose a lot of non-direct patient care appies. And on top of that, I s- re I went back to the projects that I had on my resume and I made sure I knew exactly what I did during them. So when I talked about them, I knew what I was talking about. And a lot of them were in the beginning of pharmacy school because usually towards the end you don't really do that much research. But I really had to go through that. On top of that, what helped me, I think, was attending mid-year. And also something that they looked at was I had another degree. Um, in addition to a degree, I'm also doing a certificate program, which is actually specific to the fellowship that I have. And it just happened to work out that way. So that could be another thing that made them want to choose me. But yeah, definitely the resume, your past experience, knowing what you did in your past experience. And if you have another degree, that also does put you a little bit above.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of like CV, resume, any sort of resource development with personal statements, cover letters, references, talk about those experiences a little bit. Um, Obviously, you had mentioned going back and knowing your projects, understanding exactly what you did and how you would be able to kind of communicate and convey your role. But was there anything when it came to, again, your CV, your personal statements, references, like what were some of the tips and tricks that you were able to kind of implore in the creation of these resources that you can kind of pass along to somebody who's interested in obtaining a fellowship?
I would say, so like two-part thing that I would like to say. One is when you're making your resume, I feel like I know this sounds like maybe cliche, but it's like you really want it to sound like a story. You don't need to format it the way like everyone else formats it. You can format it the way that like you feel is like makes sense for you. So I like changed things around so much before I actually applied to the fellowships. I kept moving like my research experience, then I moved like my what did I have? I had like my industry experience. Like I kept moving everything around, but then I realized that like industry experience should be like on top. So then they see that the first thing when they open up our like our resume. So that's like one thing. Like don't be afraid to like move your resume around. That I was like at first I was like I don't want to touch my resume. I think it's perfect, but then I was like no, like I need to get in and I need to change everything. And I every day I kept finding something else that I had to change. Like you are never done with your resume. That is what I learned from this process. Like you will always be working on your resume and there's no such thing as like a perfect resume. So that's one thing. And then I also think it's what really helped me was I printed out my resume and I wrote next to every experience like skills that I learned or like keywords that I wanted to say when it came up in an interview. So I would have like things to go off like in my head and be like, "Oh, okay, like leadership. Okay, like let me talk about that when I bring up this example." And I would like envision the resume in my head and like had it memorized and exactly what like Gianna said as well, like knowing exactly what you did was important because if you don't know what you did, like, and they ask you about it, like you're gonna be like really confused. So there are things on my resume that I did so many years ago that I like you kind of forget if you were like an undergrad, you're like, I don't remember what that was. But it's good to review what exactly is on your resume because they will ask you. And you need to be prepared.
The To like just jump off of that, completely correct. A big thing about moving around your resume, you're like showing off. Like you want to show off. You want to look good. So you want these people to know that you are the top applicant and they should choose you. So whatever you can put in this resume, you put in that resume. I went to Dr. Nogid for help with my or CV resume, whatever you consider it. And she gave me some tips and tricks and where to put things. It went down to the margins of the paper. So that really helped me. There's also, I think, another professor in the school that offers help with the CV. So if there's people offering to help you, definitely take up that because it really did help me as well.
I also wanted to add, like, based off what Marissa was saying about the skills and your resume and like how you use that during interviews, because you'll get a lot of different questions and you kind of want to make stories that answer each question in a way, like, and also have multiple responses in case they ask you like the same question in a different format. Like, you want to have like multiple stories for like what was a challenge or what was your like leadership. You should have like at least three of those for like each type of like I set them into categories when I like wrote them out. So you kind of just want to make like like a idea map of that or keep it in mind.
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good things. I think one thing I want to talk about a little bit more too is like who reviewed your resume, right? And like helped you with the creation of like your content. So, professors were mentioned. Did you use your preceptors while you were on your rotations as a resource?
Yes, I did actually.
Perfect. I'm seeing a lot of head nods there. And then, how about when it came to your references? Who did you decide? How did you decide? Did you have different references maybe for the different fellowship applications you were pursuing? Kind of, did anything change or developed throughout that process?
I did it with
I
oh sorry.
You go, you go.
I did like a rotation preceptor in industry and then two FDU professors, and I kind of kept it to those three people because when you're applying to like multiple schools and different programs, it's a lot to juggle so many different like people. So I like that I kept it to three from that I let throughout the whole thing because it just got easier because they could send it to multiple people.
I agree. I did the same thing as Nihala. I did one industry appy preceptor, and then I did two FDU professors. And yeah, it's also like good, like Nahala said, like having just the same people because you can just like write a list of where you applied, and then they will just send their letter because they already wrote it for you. So it's like super easy. And if you have everything organized for them, like they'll definitely appreciate that. So yes.
Awesome. Kind of continuing on with the application process and kind of getting into the coordination with like interviews. So, what was the process of interviewing, like scheduling your interviews? You had mentioned that it kind of coincided with your Appy experiences. Did you have to take time off? Did you have to travel? Talk about what your overall experience was from application to securing an interview.
So for me, the interview process started around the same time as everybody else. And because I applied to so many, I was getting a lot back. And that's what kind of stressed me out the most was making time for each one of them. Also, a lot of my fellowships were in different functional areas, so I would have to think about how to answer one question. I would use like chat and I would say, how, like, what kind of questions should I expect? Um, and I would try to relate them to each different functional area. Uh, Besides that, the only time I had to travel was for my final interview with one of the, well, with my fellowship. But it was because it was only happening a year. So I technically had to go. I don't know if like you guys are gonna have to go, but I was one of those that had to go.
For me, I was kind of like, okay, if I get in, I already had a poster submitted, but I really wasn't sure about going because it is a lot of money to go to mid-year. So definitely budget for that if you do plan to go. But I was kind of waiting to see if I got invited to any receptions or like final round interviews, and that really solidified me wanting to go, because it is a lot, and it might, for in some fellowships, it might be like your only chance, but in others, it doesn't really matter as well, like if you go or not. So it just depends on the school and company.
Yeah, I agree. I think I actually didn't go to mid-year. I knew like before going to fellowship season that I just wasn't planning on going. So I was really hoping that that wouldn't affect the outcome of my of the whole process because I was really like set on obtaining a fellowship, but um like if you cannot afford it or whatever like the circumstances at the time, like you definitely don't have to attend. But yeah, there are definitely some fellowships that do require you to go in person for the final round interview. And I know for like some unaffiliated ones that I applied to, they did write that in the brochure. They said like final round will happen at ASHP mid-year. So like it's always something to keep in mind when you're applying. So if you know beforehand that you're probably not going to go, then maybe you shouldn't like apply to that one. Um, or, just see what happens as you go through the interviews. But yeah.
So making sure that not too cost incumbent upon you to like go to the site. So, um, Nala and Jenna, did you say have you gone to where you're going to be going? Did you end up going? You've checked out where you're going to be and kind of what that looks like for you?
My apartment, I got everything.
Okay,
I
cool.
actually went during spring break, so we used that
Oh, fun.
to find everything. But yeah, it does. Like I got accepted in December, and by March I had to get my place. So because I wasn't going to Massachusetts any other time other than that. So I yeah, so I didn't have a lot of time to prepare. Everything was a rush for me, but everything worked out. Well, it also helps that like my family was with me the whole time, so that helped a lot. But yeah, it was definitely a lot all at once.
I totally get that.
Oh, I will say that for the fellowship that I'm will be doing, they did do an on-site final round interview. So they do invite you to like receptions, which is like if you make it to the final rounds, you'll be invited to a reception, which can be at mid-year. But I already had like informed them that I wasn't going to go to mid-year, so they also had like an on-site final round interview. So that I did go on site for that company. But not all companies do like in-person interviews. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good points about it. So, I mean, very different from other experiences, right? Other postdoctoral trainings. Let's talk about residencies. Like they have to go in
Right.
person for their interviews, right? It seems like fellowships could be a little bit more relaxed, right? You can do it from the comfort of your computer screen for the most part. I'm sure that you've had face-to-face conversations with some individuals potentially, but a lot of it can be done remote. Um, no, that's great pieces of advice there when it comes to the overall process. So let's talk about interviews. Um, you had mentioned, I know one of you had mentioned you had multiple interviews for, multiple weeks, like every single day for like a 3 week block. Talk about the interview experience. How many did you have? And like, how did you prepare for each one? Were you drained and kind of burnt out by the experience by the end of it? Kind of like give a little insight about what it was like to interview for such, like with the depth of interviews that you were had for what you were trying to achieve.
It's a lot. Like it's crazy, kind of. Like it like honestly changes you as a person because you literally have so many every day and they're back to back. You don't have much to pre like much time in between. So that's why it's emphasized like doing like prepping early so you're not as stressed. But I don't even have an exact number. I used to have like a tracker. So I would say like around 40 and it gets pretty crazy. Like you definitely have to be really organized with your and communicate to your preceptors and everything because it's crazy.
Yeah, and if you're a very likable person, you'll keep getting interviews from each spot. So, not trying to toot my own horn, but I did get a lot of interviews before getting rejected from the ones that I didn't get to. So, you're also going to think that maybe, oh, they like me, they like me. It doesn't mean anything. You're going to find out whether they like you or not when you get rejected or not. So, that's another big thing too. It's you have to understand that this is such a competitive thing and there's so many students that want your position. So you're really trying to sell yourself in these interviews, but also realize that if you do get rejected, it's completely fine because there's so many other opportunities for you after graduation.
Yeah, I would say definitely don't get discouraged. It does hurt like getting rejected, but you'll literally pick yourself back up because you'll get another round with a different company or a first round. Like you could literally be on your fourth round with one company and still be on your first round with another. So it's okay. Like make sure to keep your mental health in check. Like it's very stressful, but everyone will be fine.
That's very true. I would say there's going to be companies that are going to move a lot faster than other companies. So like you're gonna be good. Like you're gonna be fine. Usually all like the first round interviews come all at once. So like that first couple weeks is gonna be like probably overwhelming because you're like adjusting to the amount of interviews and getting used to talking to people and the flow of everything. But I agree, like also like telling your preceptor ahead of time, like right when you get that email of like when your interview is gonna be make sure you're sending like an email to your preceptor, like telling them if you're already in person with them, because you just want to stay on top of that before, because you're going to forget, because there's going to be so many emails that you're getting that it's going to be hard to keep everything in track if you're not writing it down.
They give you also times, like the person scheduling the interview usually gives you a set of times for you to pick from. I personally never had to do any during my appy rotation because I scheduled them all for after 5 o'clock. But that's probably why I had so many because like there's only so much time after 5 o'clock that someone wants to be on the phone. So I usually did it when I got home, maybe like an hour after I got home from my appies, just to think about what I was going to say, think about the fellowship that I'm actually interviewing for, and looking at their brochure also helped too before the interview.
Then also with the interview itself, getting into kind of like some of the content, right? Um, were there any interview questions that maybe caught you off guard? Was there anything that you kind of like weren't prepared for? Or did you feel pretty comfortable in going into everything that kind of was the interviewing experience?
I feel like most of the questions are pretty normal, like mainly about your experiences, getting to know you, but you can get some like interesting questions. Like I got, what fruit would you be? If you had to bring three medicines with you on a desert island, what medicines would you bring? So definitely have some like, idea of what kind of fruit, or, have those things. Like you gotta think outside the box a little bit for some of these.
They always want to see your personality too. So yeah, like the whole fruit thing, completely understand. It's also good to say when you're introducing yourself a fun fact about yourself, because then you're kind of setting the tone of the rest of the conversation. So if you are more conversational and you can talk, definitely bring up something that shows that about you. Otherwise they are going to be very like look at your resume. What did you do? Um, and following from what I said in the beginning, a lot of my questions I was surprised about. It was a lot of um, not even opinionated questions, not scenario-based questions. It was a lot of personal questions. So it was easier to answer than I expected it to be because there was a lot of stuff about me. So, I other people have had other experiences where they were asked like situational questions where there was a scenario. I'm grateful I haven't had to do that, but we've heard some professors tell us that they know students who have.
Did for your interviews, overall, when it came to like the preparation for this, like where did you practice? How did you find your question sets? Like kind of like what did you use in order to kind of, get yourself in a position where you would go forth and do what you needed to do?
What helped me was AI. I feel like I would use like get my question from there. Also, there's like a feature with chat that you could literally talk to like AI. So it'd be like interview me right now. And it would like give me questions that I would answer and I'd be like, tell me what I need to improve upon. And like I would literally like kind of strengthen myself through that. Or I would record my mocks and also upload those and see where I'm messing up and try to improve.
And you did that all through AI, if I can just follow up on that.
Yeah.
That was okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a heavy conversation around the AI viability and like, do you trust it? Like, I mean, clearly you put faith in the feedback that you were getting from using it as a kind of development system for yourself, and it had great results. And yeah, I encourage everybody to use that as like an exploration for sure. Um, Very good. Did you use other resources as well with any like faculty or preceptors?
I think Dr. Han, does Dr. Han do? I feel like she does the mocks, which
Yeah,
is pretty cool.
She did some mocks. Yep.
And then she asked like other fellows, so I was able to interview with some fellows from before, so that was nice too.
And definitely during your appy rotations, if you're at an industry setting, they are like very open to meeting like the fellows at that company that you're at. They're very open to meeting with appy students. So I also did some mock interviews with them as well during my appy time, my preceptor. Like I feel like if you ask any FDU faculty, like they'll be willing to do like a mock interview with you. So there's a lot of opportunity to like get practice in and like using like chat GPT for me as well, like just asking like what possible questions can I expect to see during an interview, especially in this functional area, and then like saying like, okay, like these are like my thoughts, like how like where am I lacking like in my answer, kind of very similar to Nahala as well, but I didn't record myself, but that's like really cool that you're able to upload it. I love that.
Yeah, it was like pretty helpful because as a student, like I feel like you don't know everything about industry and you're applying for industry positions. So I feel like students should use AI to their best ability, because you might get questions like you really don't know. And AI will tell you.
True.
And then for the last like 10 to 15 minutes or so, I kind of want to get into away from the applications, away from the interviews, and go really more into the um, kind of like overall challenges, advice, and kind of like open talk for the rest of the conversation. Um, One thing that you mentioned, and I kind of want to follow up on, was timelines being different, right? Did you have to potentially like withdraw your candidacy from an interview or like a specific company that you were in conversations with? Did you have to like any like renege on an offer at all because the one that you really wanted became available to you and offered to you? Did you have any experience like that, or was it kind of all though different timelines, kind of safe in the way that you approached the multiple conversations that were being had.
At least for Rutgers, they have like a specific date that like they will tell you if you get accepted or not. And I think all the other schools also do that type, sort of thing where there's like a date so you don't have to be like in a conflict and they'll understand. I'm not sure if I'm correct, but
Yeah.
The same.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I've heard stories where there might be conflict of commitments, right? Depending on different schools and different organizations that are kind of like, working together if they're affiliated, non-affiliated, so on and so forth. Do you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say like if you do like non-affiliated, they can definitely tell you any time before a university affiliate program. So there were some like affiliated programs that I did apply to, but like I didn't reach like the final round for. But if I did, like they probably would have let me know like their offer like probably like the end of November, around that time. That's usually or December, like early December before any other school like lets you know. So you probably would have had that like challenge of deciding like do I go with affiliated or do I wait a week and see if I got Rutgers or Massachusetts or wherever else I applied to. Um, but yeah, I know like there was people in the past that definitely had that like
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, you're spot on about that. I mean, you didn't have to experience it, but and I know it is something that has been a conversation with students before. Like, how do you handle
Yeah.
rejecting a company, right? If you want something else or you're waiting, the timelines don't match. It's a very interesting thing to navigate. So, couple other questions, and then some other. Then I want to get into any or open Q&A, or I have some things to ask. But did you take advantage of any of the career development programming that like we had offered through the school? If so, do you remember that any kind of stuck out to you, specifically when it came to uh, like chats just like this, right? Where we're talking about, career enhancement opportunities, job skills, internship, residency, fellowship, so on and so forth with the application prep and interviewing. What did you take advantage? What kind of helped you from what the school was able to offer you?
I would say just like the co-curricular calls like throughout pharmacy school, anything there I know IPHO did like Rutgers fellowship informational session. They had like many fellows come and talk through like different IPHO meetings. So like that was helpful whenever I've joined those because it's like you're just learning more about fellowship in general. So that was helpful. Yeah, and I think there was pretty sure there was like a mock interview last year.
For like
Um,
APS, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, the mock interview.
Yeah.
Did you take advantage of Dr. Han's mock interview sessions? You did? Okay, good. Um, how about any sort of, well, did you strongly feel if like the programs were different from one another, or were they repetitive? Did they offer enough variety? Because obviously your mindset's going to shift from a P1 to a P2 to a P3, right? Even at the P4 year, what becomes offered and available to you, you might have a different perspective on kind of like how to utilize the offerings themselves. Again, did you find it repetitive, or did you find fresh experience with some of the offerings that were provided?
It was definitely helpful to learn about it before going into it. Like both of them said, you're only a student, you really don't know what's going to happen when you go into the workforce. It's completely different. You're not going to be asked to take a test, you know? So when you get to be able to be on the other side of the computer with a professional, you really want to try to absorb everything that they're saying. And we've had multiple different video calls, chats in person. Um, like audiences where we did learn something new. And even if it wasn't related to fellowship in general, it's also a good way to learn how to just have a conversation as well, expand your vocabulary, um, anything that could really help you just stand out from others. And I feel like knowledge is power, you know? So anything could help.
I feel like if I was a student right now, like P1 or P2, I would definitely take advantage of like the IPHO banquets and being able to learn how to introduce myself to industry people and how to like have maintain conversations. So that's something I would do if I knew before.
I agree.
Speaking
Because
of,
also
oh, go
through
ahead,
the year,
Marissa.
oh, sorry, through the years of going to like the IPHO banquets, I like saw such a change in myself from year to year and how I just approached conversations, the things I asked, how I introduced myself, just everything. And you realize how much you grow the more you talk to people, the more you interact, especially through like the mock interviews. So, like, not only IPHO banquet or even just doing one-on-ones with fellows and trying to learn more, the more you talk, the more you like just learn about yourself and are comfortable with speaking. And then when it's time for interviews, you're like, oh, like, okay, it's not that bad. Like, you know yourself and you're like, okay, like, we can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of feeding off like what you just talked about, if you could go back, from someone that has obtained a fellowship, what kind of offerings would you like to see the school provide to you to make your experience or like explorations in this area a little bit more, structured, strategic, and developmental?
I think the one thing that influenced me the most because of all the experience I got to have, plus the feedback from fellows itself, was my appy experience. So my non-direct patient care appies I used for industry roles. And I feel like personally there could be more options for that, especially for students who want to be in the industry. There are the fellowship roles, I think, for the appies. Did either one of you do a mini fellowship? No. Well, I heard that that's also helpful too. But yeah, I like the idea of having options for students to do during their appies to get that experience.
I also agree. I feel like FDU has like the perfect location near so many companies. We got to find more preceptors. There's so many companies.
I do not disagree with that. I think that would be a great opportunity. How about from like a programming perspective? Marissa, did you have anything to add?
I guess the only thing I would say, maybe like having a fellowship informational session, like at the beginning of, or at the, I guess maybe the end of their P3 year before starting their P4 year. Because I think like some people like who don't maybe know yet if they want to do a fellowship or just kind of deciding before they go to their appies, like that would be a good way to like be like, okay, maybe this is a path for me, and then like know like what to expect. Because then if you decide like maybe after the summer of your appies and be like, okay, like now I'm gonna apply to fellowship, it could be like overwhelming to like get all your materials together quickly or like kind of figure out where you want to apply. So maybe like having like an earlier informational session, I don't know, maybe could be helpful.
Yeah, no, these are all good things. We do have RPIF come and do sessions, right? But I mean, it's still that those are more kind of like marketing branding of like, hey, this is what we have for you all, right? It's less of the how do you prepare and get yourself in a position for success, right? Okay. No, I totally understand it. That makes sense. Um, I don't know if you have any other programming notes for this, but I do have some other questions for you. Is there any other programming ideas? If not, a couple other questions I have before we dismiss for tonight. Um, so what were some of the good, bad, and ugly of this process? What's like the real talk that a student would want to hear from three graduating students who went through the ringer, got the position that they were looking for, had to grind out all 4 years to make themselves a competitive candidate. Kind of talk about it, like what was the highlight, low light, something in between. Give like an overall impression of the experience.
I'd say like keep pushing. Like you might get to like a point where you're feeling really low because like so many interviews, so stressful, but you just gotta keep pushing because like you never know. Like I didn't think I'd land one, but like somehow, I don't know, it happened. Like so I feel like you just have to keep going. And there's definitely like points where you feel like sad because you got rejected, or you feel really happy because you got into another round, but you're scared. But just try to like, keep your mental health in check and like, that's kind of my advice.
I really want to stress just showing your character and personality. I am not an A student. I can promise you that. You do not have to be a Rokai student to get a fellowship. So definitely don't sell yourself short. Obviously, they know that you're a professional and you got into pharmacy school because you're intelligent enough to. But don't just throw all your eggs in one basket and think because you don't get straight A's that you're not going to be able to do it. You can do it. Anybody could do it. Just definitely take the time though, because you have to put all your effort and all your time into it. So realize that you're gonna have to make some sacrifices, whether that be you go straight home and take the interview right after the appy, or you just don't hang out with your friends that weekend and study about how to answer questions. So yeah, no, anybody could do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think you have to go into that process knowing that, okay, for like max like 2 to 3 months, you're probably going to be like really stressed. But I think as the process went on, and like more interviews like kind of were getting out of the way, and I just realized that like your stress kind of like gets less because you are realizing that you're going through more rounds. You're like, okay, like I feel more comfortable about speaking about certain things. You kind of like memorized your answers at this point, because the questions are very much the same for all like interviews. They're all like very similar. So I would say like the stress level gets less at the end, ironically, even though you think it's probably worse at the end because you're like worried if you're gonna like land a fellowship or not. But like I think what I helped me through the process was just also telling myself that like I did my best to get here and like if it's meant to be like it'll work out. And I also just remind myself like I knew like my intentions for like wanting a fellowship were like really to help people at the end of the day and I really wanted to make an impact and I was like if this is like the path for me like it'll unfold like exactly how it has to be. And I kind of just like kept that mindset and that really helped. But yeah, I think like when you first start, that's like where you feel most overwhelmed because it's a whole new process for you. Like you don't know what you're walking into, and it's like it's definitely a lot, but you get used to it.
I also wanted to add that this is like interviewing for fellowships is way harder than interviewing for like a real job in a way. So it really does prepare you for real world interviews.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's all great advice. That definitely holds true. Couple other wrap up questions. Was there anything that surprised you about this process? Like looking back on it?
It's a good question. I would probably say surprised me is just, I guess, like how much I guess I don't know if this is the right word, like strength you have that you can like go through this process. You like probably like doubt yourself a lot, and that's natural to do because like you think that like maybe you can't do it, you can't obtain this, you have like all these doubts in your head, but like I just like I guess I surprised myself by like just showing up every day and like you make a commitment to go to these interviews and like showing up is like a win every day. Like even if you came out of that interview and you're like, I don't think that was the best, like I still was like I left feeling like happy that I like did it because you're under a lot of stress. You're applying to all these interviews and then you also have rotations and are expected to be like showing up fully as a pharmacy student and doing all of those requirements as well. So like it is like a full-time job plus like afterwards as well. So it's like you have to give yourself a lot of credit during that time. And I think that was like my main takeaway too. So it's very possible. It may feel impossible, but it is possible and you definitely can do it.
Anything else for surprising?
I think for me, like, so when you have all these interviews, then you get to like the last round, and it's usually a presentation, and sometimes those will be like journal clubs. So stuff you did during school, like doing journal clubs and like presenting, they actually do apply. Like you might have to actually like do a journal club for your final round, and it's definitely more stressful. So just like keep that in mind when you're like doing like journal clubs or presentations, like, oh, this is helping me prepare myself for fellowship interviewing, you know?
The one thing that I kind of thought was a little messed up was I got to know who I was competing against during like the last few rounds, and they made it seem like they loved all of us. So it was kind of like, oh wow, like you really made me think that, and now you're gonna re reject me. But other than that, I just knew how competitive it is. So going into it, I was ready for the worst. So yeah, nothing else. Just like
That's a
my
great piece of advice, though.
It's so
Seriously.
strange because you'll literally be at a table with your competitor and you just be like, okay, like
like for the I forgot what it's called, but the thing that you go to when you get into your last rounds. What
The
was it?
reception,
The
right?
reception.
Yeah.
There was four of us and we're all just eating and like drinking together and we're like friends. And then the next thing you know that they don't get accepted. So yeah, it is very
It's
it's
an interesting experience.
that's
yeah.
like a good thing to bring up because like you have to make sure that when you're interacting with your competitors, you're super friendly, you're super, like make sure you don't seem like you like off or anything. Like they're definitely looking at your interactions with your competitors too.
Yeah, they definitely do look at that. And like, just because like someone may not get selected for the fellowship that maybe you did, they may get selected for like another fellowship. So like, you don't want to like have any like issues with anyone like starting out in your career and like, regardless, like you should just always want to support people. But
Don't be
like,
burning bridges.
especially,
Yeah.
yeah, don't burn any bridges during that part. Like, really important.
No, that's a great piece of advice. It's true. It's kind of awkward, right? At points, like you look to your left, look to your right with the people around you, and be like, only one of us can get this specific position, right? And you've worked so hard, and yeah,
Right.
whether you make friends with these individuals, you'll know that they'll land on your feet, but you have to make sure you look out for yourself, obviously, in the process. So, no, I do appreciate that. That's all the major specific questions I have. We did talk about a little excuse me, pieces of advice for everybody. Is there any other final thoughts or, things that you'd want to kind of echo about either the fellowship the experience, in terms of like the interview, acquisition of one, you know, uh, just at large, any final thoughts for the audience or anybody that would be reviewing this content?
I am open if like anyone has any further questions and wants to maybe jump on a Zoom call or just like have my like email address, you can reach out to me. Definitely would love to like, help you through this process. Like definitely want to like be able to help anybody out who's interested.
Other than that, I feel like you definitely want to take up those opportunities, like how Marissa's telling you, just because you really want to make connections. industry is really big on connections. A lot of people don't stay in one industry like for a long time. They usually go back and forth to different companies. So definitely make your connections, make your friends, keep your friends from pharmacy school because you never know where people are going to end up. But yeah, that's all I have.
I guess my final advice is prepare early. Prepare for the unexpected. It's a long process, but it does go by quickly. So make sure that you're like prepared for everything. You have your letter of intent, your CV, your letters of rec, make a checklist for yourself. But
Perfect. That's all we have for tonight. I will stay after. If anybody has any questions in the chat, you can, I've asked to post. Aw, Araceli had a great little thank you for you guys. But if there's anything else you want to discuss, feel free to stay after. But officially, the event is ending now. I'm going to stop the recording.